Well, our pineapple conference was deliberately very international in terms of its speakers and interdisciplinary in terms of its scope. And I think that, it's obvious that CRASSH has a superb international reputation. And I think we felt that it would be a very, very appropriate venue to host it. And then from a very practical point of view, the fact that CRASH were very generous with their funding, but also offered administrative help, both of which we sorely needed, also made it, a very, very sensible place to approach.
Yeah, we were also keen to make sure that the conference had an interdisciplinary approach. That was really from the start of the whole idea, and CRASH is very much associated with interdisciplinarity, and we wanted to be associated with CRASH for that reason.
Well, our pineapple conference really was part of the Feast and Fast food exhibition at the Fitzwilliam Museum. It was part of the public programming, and we wanted it to be both academically rigorous, but also accessible and interesting to the broader public. And so by hosting it at CRASH, I think we were able to meet both markets.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the other thing we were really keen to do is bring in different disciplines. I mean, around a subject that really is in some ways a kind of tired subject, the pineapple. There are many cultural histories of the pineapple that are sold to the wider public, and we really wanted to bring in a kind of edgier scholarship and have a conversation across disciplines, and the conference allowed us to do that. Well, it has to be the pineapple explosion in front of the Fitzwilliam on the first day. I'd really never experienced anything like that before. That was done by Bon Person Par. Amazing, bringing also members of the public as well, and being surrounded by this kind of pineapple flavored mist was extraordinary. But after the pineapple, I would have to say one of the last papers of the day, which is a paper by Martin Moforth about pineapple production in contemporary Costa Rica. So a highlight, not in a positive sense, but a highlight in terms of really engaging with some of the kind of political and economic consequences of pineapple production today.
Yeah, for me, I think the real interdisciplinary mix was amazing. I'm used to sitting in conferences just full of art historians, and actually to have hard scientists and mathematicians and social scientists and art historians and historians of culture, and to say the historical perspective from the 16th century right the way through to contemporary politics, as Melissa just said. I mean, the variety, the scope, I think again was very, very unusual for most so-called interdisciplinary conferences. I too very much enjoyed being engulfed in the pineapple-scented mist outside the giant architectonic pineapple by the Fitzwilliam. It was a great way to start actually at the museum where the exhibition is, and then to move on. And then the first day was hosted at the herbarium and in the Sainsbury laboratory at the Botanical Gardens, and that allowed delegates in the lunchtime to go around some of the glass houses and see various sort of plants being grown. And also the co-convenor, Dr. Lauren Gardner, had prepared some wonderful specimens rarely seen in the herbarium to do with pineapples and cultivars and so on. So I think a real interdisciplinary mix will make this absolutely unforgettable for me.
I mean, first of all, I gave a paper in the conference, which was something I'd actually developed from the Feast and Fast exhibition about pomegranates and pineapples, and kind of pushed me further to think about the eating and representing of exotic fruit in the early modern period. More generally, I've started engaging with what sometimes gets called plant humanities, and I would like to spend a little bit more time thinking about the extraordinary kind of recipes that are available in the early modern period in relation to health remedies and to plants, and the role of plants in commonplace books, in receipt books, in Britain and in Italy. So I think that probably is where my research might go. And I think the pineapple has really kind of pushed me in that direction. The pineapple conference has pushed me in that direction to kind of, to pursue that further.
For me, what was really interesting was seeing the fascination from both the delegates and the participants into the multi-sensory aspects of work. I mean, one's aware of that, but as a museum curator, one's often just thinking about visual and possibly tactile, but actually thinking about touch and smell and taste in the context of food was very, very interesting, and the very, very positive feedback that we had. So I think that Melissa and I are hoping that in the future we might be able to develop this sensory research into other public facing, perhaps exhibitions, conferences, and so on.
Yeah, I also wanted to add a little something about how important it was for me just to think much more broadly about the production and the consumption of pineapples. The paper by Howard Griffiths reminded us that actually pineapples had been cultivated in the Caribbean and South America for a much longer period, and so the discovery of the pineapple by Europeans isn't really the starting point, but hundreds of years before that, indigenous peoples were cultivating the pineapple. So it gave the conference kind of gave me a perspective which is both not kind of Eurocentric, but also kind of much broader chronologically. So I think that was a really important part for my research, to think about fruit and exotic fruit kind of more generally. Well, first of all, just be prepared for changes in the program. We had lots of changes over the months coming up to the program, and managed in the end. So I said that would be my top tip. And then the second one would be to be really kind of open and ambitious in putting together the program, both in terms of bringing the kinds of people together, but also the spaces that are available here, the people that are available in Cambridge as well. I mean, it took a lot of work to set up some of the event, the pineapple event in the museum, but also the visits in the glass houses and herbarium, and I think that really added to the conference, and it was well worth the effort.
And my top tip would be to make sure that you manage to get Nikki Davidovsky as your administrator. Nikki gave us absolutely fantastic help, and without her we'd have been completely sunk. She was efficient, she was charming, she was organised, she was proactive, she was a problem solver. Nothing was too much effort, and it made our lives hugely easy, and she facilitated every single turn. So my top tip is to make sure that you use CRASSH and you use Nikki. Thank you.